So what SOLIDWORKS Electrical can bring to the table is designing tools for both the electrical engineers and the mechanical engineers so they can work concurrently. So these tools were built with the purpose of electrical schematics, electrical 3D, which is going to give you, wire lengths and routing options, and real-time collaboration with your team members. So Loretta's going to walk through some, typical processes with electrical and give you some highlights about SOLIDWORKS Electrical. So Loretta, I'll let you roll into giving everyone, the highlights of electrical.
Okay. Hello, everyone. So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to step you through a common electrical design process. And there are 4 main steps in this that I've broken it up into 4 main steps. The first step is to plan your project. Then we're going to get into actually drawing your schematics. And then we're going to go from 2D into 3D and play the role of the mechanical engineer, actually taking the 3D component models and putting them into an assembly. And then finally, I'm going to talk a little bit about how you're going to document your design. So let's jump over here into SOLIDWORKS Electrical. I'm going to start here with just a blank sheet of paper. I'm actually going to start planning in what we call a line diagram. Right, so I've got my line diagram open, and I know that I want to put some motors in this project, and I know that I want to connect them to a terminal strip. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started. And what I can do is I can utilize these powerful design libraries that come with SOLIDWORKS Electrical to search for exactly what I need. So I can search by classification, and you'll notice here what we've got is we've got really high-level pictorial representations of all the types of components that we might want to add into our planning diagram. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a terminal strip and place it here. As soon as I do that, what happens is that a new component is created within my project, and it's labeled X1, that's its mark number, and it's placed into my main electrical closet. I can create more locations if I want to later, but I'm just going to leave it at that for now. And so now I've got a terminal strip in there. I've actually got it there, and I've got it here in my project, so I can use that in other places. So now I want to go ahead and insert some motors. Again, I'm going to go into my design library and pull out a motor and place it. So it's creating a motor called M1. And I'm going to go ahead and add a manufacturer part to this right now because I know what that is for this project. So here I can also search by classification, or I can filter by manufacturer, by type. I could even filter by a library, and these are all fully customizable. So if I had certain symbols that I wanted to use for certain projects or certain manufacturers' parts that I wanted to use just in certain projects, I could put those into a library, and in that way I could control what I'm doing within that project. Then I can search by reference number, description, article number, and I can even search by the number of circuits. So I happen to know I want to put associate this part to that symbol. And I go ahead and do that, and you can see we even have the circuits in here. So we're starting to add a little bit of electrical intelligence to our project just in the planning phase. Okay, so I've got one motor and one terminal strip in here. I actually want to have, I think, 5 motors. So what I can do is I can copy and paste it using Control-C and Control-V and just go ahead and start adding more motors into my project. And you'll notice here, not only does the symbol copy, but it updates the mark. So we've got new components in our project. We've got motors M1 through M4 and terminal strip X1. And we've also got a manufacturer part associated to that based on the component that I copied. Okay, so now I want to connect my terminal strip to my motors with a cable. This is as simple as just drawing a line. and I'm pretty much done planning at this point. Now,
so Loretta, I'm sorry, Loretta, it's Mary Beth. Just a little interruption, just to make sure I'm kind of clear on what's going on here, and maybe since our attendees can't actually ask questions. So this is actually just you're laying it out, you're trying to figure out what you want to do, and you're doing the general layout. So when you go into the schematics for the detailing, is there a connection between this plan and the components that you put in, and when you get into the detailing? I'm sure you're going to get into that, but this isn't just pictures on a page, right? So if you could dive into where where the benefits of just having your general layout, so you can have discussions with team members about it, and then go into the details of the drawings. That might help people out a little bit.
Yeah, of course. So one of the things we can do from this planning space is to actually add in a little bit more detail to these cables here, because right now they're just lines. If I double click on this, I can actually go in and add a cable here from my libraries as well, and I can search by the number of conductors that I want and add that in as well. And then I can actually go in and connect the individual points here. I already know what that is. I can go in and add in a bunch of terminals, so 4 times 3 is 12, good. And I can connect the other side of the cable to those terminals. So what I've done here is I've added a bunch of electrical intelligence to my diagram directly from this planning part here. And all my components that I added, like I showed you, are available now for me to use in the next stage of my design process, which is what I'm going to show you next. So I want you to keep a lookout for how I'm able to reuse the work that I've done here in the second phase of the process, which is the drawing phase in the schematic. So I'm actually going to go ahead and fast forward a little bit. I've already created a little bit more of a detailed line diagram here. I'm just going to show it to you really quickly. Here's our terminal strip, and here are our motors, right? And I've added some cables in here. I've also added some contactors in here as well. I've connected everything up to a PLC, and I've added a few buttons in here. So that's our fast forward. And now let's jump into the actual schematic. Okay, so what I've got here is I've got our 4 out of our 5 motors, M1, M2, M3, and M5. And these are the exact same motors that we had in our planning diagram, right? This is the same thing. I've just represented it on a schematic page. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how we can add in the schematic for M4. So I can just go ahead and insert a wire type here. I can select from my wire style selector any of a number of different types of wires. And SOLIDWORKS Electrical allows me to draw a bunch of wires at one time with only a few clicks. As soon as I click, it's going to start adding those bins for me. If I hit spacebar, I can toggle how those bins are handled. Okay, so now we need to add in the circuit breaker here. And we're going to do the same thing that we did in the schematic, but you're going to see these symbols are going to be different, right? Because we're delving into the schematic and we're no longer planning. So it automatically knows that, and it allows us to pick from your standard symbols that you would use as an electrical engineer, right? So I'm going to select this circuit breaker here. And as I place it, as you saw earlier, it's going to try and create a new component for me. And what I can do is I can actually reuse or associate it with something that is already existing in my project. So I've already got the circuit breaker here that you saw in our planning diagram. So I can just reuse that, and it's going to go ahead and add in all of my manufacturer data there as well. So now I need to add in a contactor, and I'm just going to do this in a little bit of a different way to show you maybe an easier way for you to do things. If you know there are symbols that you use often, you reuse often, you can actually just go ahead and add them to this palette here. You can create a new group to your liking. And then all you have to do is drag and drop them into your project. Again, I'm going to associate this with something that I already have. And now I'm good to place the next symbol. I also need a motor in here. This is M4. And it's that easy. Okay, so now we need to insert a terminal strip. And this can be kind of a time-consuming process, and it's often an area where we can make a mistake. SOLIDWORKS Electrical is going to make this really easy for us. All I have to do is literally just draw a line across the wires that we want to insert terminals on and click. And then we can either add a new terminal strip or select an existing one, and it will just go ahead and start counting where we left off. So terminal 12 was here, and now it's 13, 14, 15, and 16. So it was that easy to do that, to do all that work. Now I could have just copied and pasted this, of course, but I wanted to show you how I got there. The other thing I want to point out is that it actually automatically knows which cable is associated with these 4 wires, and it puts that in there for us. Okay, so now we have drawn our schematic, and it's time for us to go into the modeling phase of our design process. So now let's go and play the role of the mechanical engineer. I've got my assembly started here.
So Loretta, just before we move on, so if we can talk to what connects the 3D part to the 2D schematic to give these engineers the concurrent engineering process. So what is the connector between the 3D and the 2D schematic?
That's a great question. Okay, so let me just show you that. Let's play the role of both the electrical engineer and the mechanical engineer at the same time here, just to demonstrate how the SQL Server database is going to keep everything up to date. So I've got this design element here. I'm just going to copy and paste it, my drawing. And now I've created a new circuit breaker, Q11. Okay, so let's see what the mechanical engineer sees in SOLIDWORKS. Over here they've got Q11, and they can go ahead and start adding that to their model. So from 3D space, we could insert components in a couple of different ways. One way is to just say insert, and if it's defined properly, you can just go ahead and place that on the rail, and that's how easy it is. So now we've got Q11, it's right here. Now let's say as the electrical engineer, I realize I no longer need this. I don't want this in my project at all, so I'm going to go ahead and delete it. Keep your eye on Q11 in the 3D space as I do this. So what happens is it is actually deleted from my 3D model as well. And this is going to help keep everything up to date and in sync with one another. So you're not going to be over-ordering when it comes time to actually go to manufacturing. Right,
so that's great. So I'm sorry, Loretta.
No, go ahead.
So that's great. So I just want to clarify. So as long as the 3D or the mechanical engineer is in the project, he'll see real time what's happening with the project on the 2D side.
Exactly. Yes.
Fantastic. Thank you.
And that's what makes it such a powerful collaboration tool. So the other way that we can add components to our assembly is to simply associate them with elements that are already there, so 3D models that are already there. So I'm going to do that with Q6. I've already got it associated. Okay, I'm going to dissociate it first so I can show you this. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and say associate. And what SOLIDWORKS is going to do for me is that it's actually going to go through and look at all the 3D models that I've got in my assembly and help me to select the correct component to associate that with. Can everyone still see my screen?
I can see, but it seems frozen. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I
There
think
we go.
the internet went out for a second. I'm not sure what happened. Yeah, so you see all of the other components became translucent, and it's helping me to select this one as the correct component to associate that to. Right. Okay. All right. So now I've got all of my components. I've placed all my components in the correct spots. Just zoom back out here. And it's time to wire everything up. So what I've done is I've created a simple EW path. This is just a 3D sketch. If you're familiar with SOLIDWORks, it's really easy to make this. All you do is you just use your sketch tools and you add lines. And this is one of the elements that SOLIDWORks Electrical looks at when we route our wires. So other than that, we don't have to give it any other information except for the schematics that we created, of course. And then we can just have SOLIDWORks route all of our wires for us in 3D space. And this is going to save you a ton of time. I know a lot of companies do this manually after the fact, and then they run into situations where they don't have enough space for their wires, or their cabinet is too big and they didn't need to make it that big. All their components would fit in a smaller space, and all their wires would fit in a smaller space. And this is going to help you to predict your wire lengths and also how much space you need in your actual enclosure. So what SOLIDWORKS Electrical does here is it goes through each wire type that you've put in your project, and it pulls the from to lists from your schematics, and it looks at the components and the connection points there, and then it routes each wire type one at a time in the project for you.
So Loretta, just as this is doing the routing, we do have one question that came up pertaining to the libraries. And since we're still in the design phase before we get on to the documentation phase, the question is, do the libraries come with the program, or do they need to be created by the user?
That's a really good question. So a lot of components do come with the program. There are actually thousands of components that come with the program and symbols. There's also an online database specifically for electrical projects. That being said, you can also create your own components if they are not online or they don't exist already in the SOLIDWORKS Electrical database. So there are a bunch of different resources for you. Right. So does that answer your question? Good?
Yes,
okay.
it does.
All right.
Thank you.
So, so you can see all of the wires have already routed. And I was even able to segregate out these green wires from the blue wires using my segregation manager. I just did this ahead of time, and I said, I want to include these wires in this path, and I want to exclude these wires from this duct. So that's how I got to my final result. Okay, so now we're done modeling, and we can move into the documentation phase. We can do documentation either from 3D space or from 2D space. And we can add a bunch of different types of reports to our final result. We've got a list of wires by line style, a list of cables grouped by reference, and then also a bill of materials grouped by manufacturer selected to create here. So I'm just going to go ahead and generate my drawings, and we'll take a look at the list of wires by line style. And all of these drawings can be exported as PDFs so that you can share them with whoever you want to share them with. Okay. So we've got our reports here. I'm going to take a look at our list of wires really quick. So this is really great because we've got our origin for each wire, we've got our destination, we've got our wire number, and we've even got our length. And if I zoom in here, you can see we've even got a total length for each wire type. So this allows us to predict how much we should order. for a particular project. And it's sorted by wire style. We've also got bill of materials sorted by manufacturer, and all of this, again, is fully customizable. So
Loretta, as we're on the bill of material, just to make sure that that bill of material is taking into account everything from the 2D side and the 3D side, right? Making sure that there's no the overlap, like that those components are only represented once.
Absolutely, yeah. So yes, everything is in sync with each other, and this is taking into account the entire project. So you're not going to be over-ordering or under-ordering components using this program. Okay, so now I'm going to pass it back over to Mary Beth, and we'll do a little review.
Right. So as you've seen, Loretta's gone from the plan, the layout stage of, just trying to get your thoughts onto paper as how you want to proceed, but adding some intelligence into that. So as you get into the draw stage, you don't have to duplicate the work in the schematics. You can really just fine-tune and detail your schematics. And with the 3D modeling, you're getting your wire lengths and your routing paths and helping you save time there, and then your documentation, a real time saver there instead of, having a review where the mechanical guys and electrical guys are having two separate bombs. So it's a great product where you have great collaboration between your electrical and mechanical groups. So we've gone, what we wanted to show you next is just, this is a customer that uses SOLIDWORKS Electrical, and we're going to show you, their end results and the benefits that they found in using the electrical tool. So they found what the main things they were looking at. They had challenges with the electrical design time, the cabinet sizes, the quality of their schematics, and ordering errors. And they reduced their electrical design time by 50%. They had reduced the cabinet size by 25%. Their quality of the schematics had improved, and their ordering errors because of the combined bombs of both the electrical and mechanical side had gone down. So that's just a quick overview of SOLIDWORKS Electrical. We'd be happy to answer any questions. If anyone has any further questions, you can kind of type in the questions, or if you'd like to reach out to anyone here at Design Point Solutions, feel free to contact us. We can be reached at 732-669-0055 and be happy to answer any other questions you have. So we'll give it a couple minutes to see if anybody has any questions they would like to ask. But, from Loretta and myself, we'd like to thank you for joining our webinar. So it doesn't look like we have any more questions. So thank you, everyone, for attending. Oh, wait, one question. I'm sorry. Yes, the webinar will be saved for people to review at a later time. We'll just give it a couple more minutes to see if anybody else has any more questions. Well, okay, I think we're good. Doesn't seem like we have any more questions. Thank you for attending, and as I said, if you'd like to reach out and ask more questions, we'd be happy to answer them for you. Thank you.